Well, I did it. 2 things that were daunting that ended up ending at the same time. Yes, I have read the entire Booker 2020 shortlist, which also means that I have read the entire Nervous Conditions trilogy in order to get to This Mournable Body, which is one of the books that is on that list. These books are Nervous Conditions, The Book of Not, and This Mournable Body, all by Tsitsi Dangarembga. Nervous Conditions itself is considered to be one of the 12 best African books, so I'm happy to say that I have read it. Now, although I did read the entire trilogy for this, I'm really gonna focus on This Mournable Body. I'll talk slightly about these two, but really I'm just gonna focus on This Mournable Body for a number of reasons. One, which I feel like makes the most sense, I'm reviewing the Booker 2020 long-listed books, and so this is the one that's actually on the list. But also, I didn't love these. It took me so long to get through these. And originally, as a part of the Booker Boy book club, like the schedule for it was to get through all 3 of them in 1 week, and that definitely did not happen. I think I even started this one early, and still I was reading it over a week after the week we were supposed to read all 3. And the Book of Not took me a very long time as well. This Mournable Body, however, I finished so quickly. I got through this book so fast. It might be the fastest I've gotten through any of the Booker books at this point. I'm hearing some people call it boring, and I don't know if it was just because I did find Nervous Conditions and the Book of Not boring, but I did not find This Mournable Body boring. In fact, I really liked it. Like, I really liked this book. And no one was more surprised than me by the time I got to this book, and I was like, I don't know if I can do the 3rd book of this trilogy, but like I said I was gonna do it, and I started it, and like boom, I was in. I liked it so much that it made me really happy that I read the first 2, although I don't think you need to. I do think that this one would have more of an impact on you had you read the first 2 books. Definitely. It definitely would. But anyways, let's get into it. The Nervous Conditions trilogy follows Tambutsai, or Tambu, as she is growing up. She's a child in nervous conditions and then grows fully into an adult by the end of This Mournable Body. And you get to see her throughout her life, her home life, her schooling, her in the workforce. You see it all. The entire trilogy is set in Zimbabwe, which is where Dangarembga is from, and it covers like so many different themes, obviously, in the whole trilogy itself. Once again, though, I'm going to be focusing on This Mournable Body. So I've got quite a few things that I want to talk about for this one, but I think that each of them is a bit shorter than my normal, so we'll see how long this video ends up. I can ramble for a long time about books though, so. Let's start with this idea of competition, because I think that this is very prevalent in the main character's life. She seems to believe that if somebody else gets something, then that means that she does not get that thing. And you can see that this is the way that she thinks with roommates she has, within the workforce, and it really all stemmed from her younger life. The only reason she is able to get as good of an education as she does end up getting is because her brother passes away. That's not a spoiler, it happens, like the first line talks about it in Nervous Conditions, so don't worry. But her brother was given this opportunity by her uncle, Baba Mukuru, who takes her brother to live with his family and go to school where he is the principal. But her brother ends up passing away, and then this opportunity is given to Tambu, which is a rare opportunity because she is from this village and also she's female, but there's no other brother that she has that could partake in this, so all of a sudden she becomes the one that can get this greater education. And so she jumps at the chance. She's very excited about it. She goes off and does that. Later in another school, you can see her fighting to be at the top of the rankings by trying to study the hardest. And she turns it from being, I want to be the best in the school, to I just want to be better than the person that's right above me. And that mentality really doesn't change. She oftentimes thinks of opportunities as if that person gets it, I don't. That glory really can't be shared, that you have to kind of just get ahead. And it's clear why she thinks that from her past, but it does make her a very flawed character by the time we get to this Mournable Body. So taking that and rolling into the next theme of internal promise. So Tambu struggles a lot with herself and this idea that she's been given so much opportunity and that she's not doing enough with it. It's really heartbreaking to see and to read, because you can see how she has this unhealthy relationship with success, but also that she believes that she should have it because she's been given every opportunity to get it. She has this line in this Mournable Body, and I wish I could find this quote, but I didn't have my tabs while I was reading it when I got to that part, and now I can't find it, but I'll try to paraphrase or get as close as I can. But she has this section where she says how hard it must be to get to a spot where you can care about other people, that she can only really care about herself at this point because she's just so far behind. She feels like she hasn't gained enough. She hasn't gone forward enough to be able to start caring about the people around her, which we'll get to more in the next theme because that's huge. But I think that this also plays into the way that the story is written, because the first book, Nervous Conditions, is told in first person, as is the second, although every once in a while we get these weird second person breaking the fourth wall moments where it seems like Dangarembga is talking to us as the reader. And then the entirety of this Mournable Body is written in second person, which I was really surprised about when I got there and totally on board with. I think that second person is a great writing style. I love to see it. I think it should be used more. I think it does something to tie in the reader so much more into the book, and particularly in this case, because this whole idea of not being able to think beyond oneself and then using this Mournable Body to make you the main character, to be talking specifically to you. You are doing these things, you feel this way. It's really fascinating, and I think that it's really cool that there was a transition to using second person. So Tambu is making all of these promises to herself. She kind of goes through these spiraling periods where she feels like she can't believe she hasn't done enough with what she's been given, and then all of a sudden she'll come back around and she'll be like, okay, no, I'm really gonna do it, these are the steps I'm gonna take, and she fights hard, but it never really feels like enough, that she's never really getting enough to care about anybody besides herself. In fact, she actually sees marriage as a way to better her position rather than to just try to be in a marriage for the happiness of it. It's definitely more of a, could you imagine if I was married, I wouldn't have to worry about all this stuff. It would already be sorted out for me. And I don't think it's that she doesn't want to work and succeed. I think even if she was married, she would want to be doing those things. She would still want to be trying to make it in whatever career she's in. But she sees it more as I wouldn't have to worry about where I'm living or if I'm going to have enough money for food, things like that. And it's sad to see a character see marriage in that way. But I also think that that shows this side of Tambu where you see that she really is somebody that tries hard, that is very ambitious, where she's mostly thinking about that. But even with all that, and even with the opportunity that she's been given, it's still incredibly hard for her to succeed. She sees the only way of gaining her independence as through her studies, as through work, at the same time as Zimbabwe itself is trying to gain its independence. So it's really this remarkable juxtaposition. And then on top of that, so Tambu already has these internal promises that she's making to herself, but then she's also got all of these external expectations. So when we're introduced to Tambu initially, it's not long before we are also introduced to her uncle, Baba Mukuru. Baba Mukuru has had a lot of success in his life, and he is in a pretty good spot financially, and so he is able to give to his brother and his brother's family, that being the family of Tambu, as well as to others around him. He is constantly giving to others that are less fortunate. And when you're looking through Tambu's eyes as a child, he seems like this incredible benefactor, that he's just constantly giving, and how amazing it must be to be him, to be in a situation where you can just always be giving. And you get to see Tambu grow up and be given all of these opportunities, and so her family kind of expects her to become her own Baba Mukuru and to be able to give back to her family. In fact, they almost see it as an exchange where they're saying, okay, like, you can take her to go study and go to school, but we're losing one of our hands on the farm. Like, we can't get as much done now, and we're probably not going to be making as much money. They see it as an investment for their future, that once Tambu does well, then she'll be able to give back. So already Tambu is feeling guilt that she's been given these things and that she hasn't reached a high enough level of success, but then also it's not just her own expectations on herself, it's everybody else's expectations on her. It's Baba Mukuru's expectations on her, although he probably would understand most of all, just because I think that throughout the earlier books before this Mournable Body, you get the idea that Baba Mukuru also struggles himself, that he's likely dealing with the pressure of these external expectations as well, even though he is more in a position to give than Tambu is getting to when we're reading this Mournable Body. This is really, really hard on Tambu, and she struggles a lot through this Mournable Body, and even through the books before it. It is tough to read, but Tambu always seems a bit like a detached character, and I don't know if I see that as a good thing or a bad thing, honestly. I think that I did like it because it almost felt like Tambu was a vehicle for the story rather than a character itself. Like, she didn't seem entirely fully fleshed out, but it did make it easier to see that it's not really the story about one specific person, but it's a story about what can happen to a person when put into this situation, when all these pressures are laid down on her, when at first what looks like this golden opportunity to get out of the village that you've been stuck in growing up and be able to get out and maybe one day see the world and then give back to your family, to be the new Baba Mukuru, and then to end up where she actually is, to see the years ticking by and that she's not at the level that she expected to be at. I think the story really isn't just about Tambu, but it's using her to show a greater story. So I think that that's why maybe the intricacies of Tambu are never really fully fleshed out. And not only that, but Tambu herself struggles with who she is as a person, since she has grown up in a village and now she's going to school and she's starting to need to deal with different languages and different customs depending on who she's around. And being around her parents is very different than being in school. And even being at her uncle's house, there is still a slight detachment from all of the rules that are generally followed in her town, in the village. So she's kind of struggling to still be that person that grew up that way, but also be successful and be taking advantage of the opportunities that are presented to her. And that kind of ties into the last theme, which surrounds culture. The scenes surrounding this theme, I think, were the toughest to get through, but also the most impactful. Tambu ends up working for this eco-tourism company, and it is essentially turning what to her is the purest parts of her experience in Zimbabwe into like this show, and she's very much a part of that. And I think it's the best explanation for who Tambu is in general. In fact, I want to read out a quote for this one. "How restoring it is, even as you plod toward middle age, to reap a positive outcome from the convent that, while it educated you, rendered you they, the Africans. As tour supervisor at Green Jacaranda, you are still Zimbabwean enough, which is to say African enough, to be interesting to the tourists, but not so strange as to be threatening. I think that that quote in itself really shows who Tambu is. She's stuck between these two worlds, not really belonging to either one of them, where she did belong in her own family and only felt like she didn't once she went to school away from them. But by going to school away from them, it wasn't that she became a part of the school body, but then instead that she was labeled as they, as different, as other, yet still just being in close proximity to those people. If she goes back home, she no longer fully belongs there either. And you really feel for Tambu in the story, as she's not even pulled in two different directions, but she's almost pushed away from each area equally, saying that you're not enough of this and you're not enough of this. And so she winds up in like this tourism industry where she knows that she's enough of both things to work in this one specific instance. She's enough Zimbabwean, she's enough African for these white tourists, for them to feel comfortable around her, but for her to not be too threatening. And it's just gut-wrenching to see Tambu come like full circle throughout all three of these books and wind up back in this caricaturized version of her home. But I think that it was a really incredible story, and I really liked it. Okay, so the rankings as they stand right now, we've got Burnt Sugar, Real Life, The New Wilderness, Shuggie, Bain, The Shadow King, and Such a Fun Age. And I think that this Mournable Body can easily fit for me in spot number 3. I don't think I did a good job of explaining these rankings. These rankings are my personal opinion. If you haven't seen one of my other videos, these are completely my opinion. This, for me, was 3rd. Burnt Sugar, you know, I still love it. It's still my top. Real Life, I also, the further I get from when I read Real Life, like the more I'm just like enamored with it. But this Mournable Body, I think that it does pretty easily beat The New Wilderness. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please do consider subscribing to see more Booker content that I will be putting out shortly. If you want to see all of the Booker content I have made so far, you can check out my Booker 2020 playlist in either the info cards or in my description down below. So with all that being said, I will see you in the next one. Thanks, bye.